welcome to our webinar today here from MasterControl from Disconnected to Llearn, talking you through our quality management system and our EBR integration. We're excited to share this with you, and we're going to get into the presentation today. You've got myself here. I'm one of the regional account executives here at MasterControl. I look after the European region. I'm here with my colleague David Toms, who's one of our European solutions consultants. You'll meet him a little bit later on as he'll be demonstrating the system for you. But to begin with, we'll just go through a little bit of background about MasterControl and what we're going to cover today. So for those of you who aren't familiar with MasterControl, we provide a cloud-based, no-code QMS EBR system that has been developed specifically for the life sciences industry. It's built in a modular way, which is natively integrated, removing the need for complex APIs and integration. Experience-wise, we've been doing this for over 30 years, and we've currently got close to 1,200 customers across the globe. They are pharmaceutical companies, medical device companies, biotech, and then some other highly regulated general industry companies as well. We're driven here at MasterControl by our mission statement, which is bringing life-changing products to more people sooner. We do this through partnering with organizations like yourselves by providing the best-in-class QMS and helping bridge the gap between performance and quality. With that being said, here's the agenda. Will probably be around about, sorry, we've skipped a slide there, around about 45 minutes. So we'll be discussing the findings to begin with from a recent research report conducted by MasterControl, as well as the benefits of a connected quality platform. We will then pass the time over to David, who will be giving us a demonstration of the quality and manufacturing excellence solutions. You'll see there why it's such a valuable tool that will help you achieve your paperless, errorless, and frictionless quality management process. After the demonstration, we will save some time to answer any questions that have been asked throughout the webinar. If you do have any questions, please put them in the Q&A section of the webinar below and not in the chat. We'll be monitoring the Q&A slide instead. So we'll loop back round to those and answer as many we can in the remaining time. So getting into the details, as a life sciences professional, you need a system that is high quality. However, you must also ensure that you're using your resources, such as time and money, effectively. Safety is obviously paramount, and I'm sure we would all agree with that. But you also need the ability to scale and accelerate production to meet demand at times. You need the control of a locked system with the flexibility to deliver a variety of clients and patients. Compliance must also remain top of mind, but can't get in the way of innovation. Many of these trade-offs stem from systems, department, processes, all being disconnected. So the solution we have is to eliminate these trade-offs. We do that by increasing digital collaboration across the organization that you work in. Going digital can highlight those shared priorities and help everyone achieve the goals and improvements that the business operations are looking for. MasterControl also helps the organization be on the same page, particularly across manufacturing and quality departments, where we do see quite a big disconnect at times. So, as we said, MasterControl recently conducted some research with over 300 quality and manufacturing professionals across the life sciences industry to help us dig into the digitalization and what that actually means for organizations like yours. What we discovered was 58% of respondents view digitalization as a high priority for them and their organization. They do have a formal digital transformation plan in place as well, but most commonly, they have some digitalization in place, not all. This may be with some sites having a QMS or MES or EBR, and some sites not. They may have some basic automation in place, but there is a lot of room there to help improve and be better connected. There's definitely a huge recognition from the research we did that there is room for improvement. So some of the findings in a chart there of the benefits that can be experienced by becoming more digital, more connected, and more collaborative. Obviously, it does encourage a number of improvements such as cross-functionality, better data access, reduced errors, more efficiency, less downtime. The list does go on. So the misalignment between departments today, the lack of connectivity and room for improvement to experience these benefits is quite evident when we asked about the QMS and EBR integrations that exist today. Less than half of the quality departments said that their QMS is connected to their EBR, and less than a third say their EBR is connected to their QMS. These missing connections represent critical missing links between these departments that are preventing them from sharing workflows, insights, and more. So the MasterControl solution, the connected platform, it's a purpose-built, connected, configurable, closed-loop platform that unifies your quality and manufacturing, easily scales across your organization, and supports seamless cross-functional integration and collaboration. It's very clear from our research that despite challenges, life science companies are increasingly moving towards digital solutions for their quality process and manufacturing operations in order to remain competitive, improve operations, and accelerate development. While change can be quite daunting, it's not impossible. Finding the right partner is key in a successful implementation and realizing those benefits of digital maturity. With that in mind, the results really do speak for themselves. The numbers that we can see here on screen, whilst these are aggregated across multiple customers, most organizations that we work with see something very, very similar. MasterControl helps eliminate costly GMP errors, helps improve right first time, accelerates review and release by improving data integrity. So, some pretty impressive numbers there, as I'm sure you'll agree. With all that in mind, it's the perfect time to pass over to David. We'll be able to show you the system. You can see exactly what we're talking about, how we can be better connected digitally, and we'll show you our quality excellence and manufacturing excellence solutions as well. So, David, I'll stop sharing and over to you.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Tom. So let me share my screen and start my video so we can say hello. Morning, everyone. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and we'll get going with the session. So I'm going to just scooch back to one of the slides that you shared a moment ago, Tom, because I think that this really kind of encapsulates and speaks from a high level perspective around the connectivity that we have between quality and manufacturing. So you can use the MasterControl solutions individually, that's absolutely fine. But where we see the real power of the system is in that connected platform, using the various elements together side by side, so you don't have to use a set of point solutions, or worse still, end up with paper-based processes. So in this session, we're going to take a high-level look at how MasterControl connects together the manufacturing and the quality side. Now, with electronic systems, we ideally want them to support things like an ease of day-to-day use for the end user. It's got to be straightforward and intuitive in the processes that we work to. We want to be able to automate those processes as far as we possibly can, and also think about standardization. So we want, best practice, but also to give us flexibility in how we do this. So by that, I mean, we want your processes and data your way against your organization. We also crucially want to provide traceability for data and processes as well. Now, there's a lot of value and functionality that MasterControl provides for both quality and manufacturing solutions separately, but we'll take a little glimpse, a little look at what this world looks like if we use them together. So we'll be spending the next few minutes looking at the art of the possible across a connected platform. So if we just, again, zoom in a little bit more against how this looks and how the connectivity operates, we'll be getting into the live system in just a second, and I'll show you some of how this operates. But if we think on the left-hand side here about the quality tile, so the linkage between EBR and the QX portion of MasterControl. So you can link to your quality processes, any kind of documentation, or indeed content. We are file format neutral. You can think about training against your batch records, maybe against the documents. And it's not just read and understand. MasterControl can manage training in a more general way across the organization. So I might have maybe a competency-based task. Maybe Tom, as my supervisor, is going to be verifying and signing me off to say that I can do that. So it's not just against read and understands, as we said. in the middle of the screen here, we see the manufacturing element. So from a manufacturing perspective, you're going to be wanting to digitize your batch records. And that's not just putting paper to glass, but creating smarter batch records within the system. And some of the common issues that we come across quite commonly with the organizations we work with are things like missing data, incorrectly input or calculated data. Some calculations can be quite complex. Data that's illegible. I came from a clinical background, and we had very similar issues with the physicians that were actually completing essentially patient batch records within our clinical environment. Changes might not be rationalized. We might have out of range information that's not queried or corrected appropriately. And also we might want to think about equipment use within the batch records and our manufacturing processes. So we might want to be able to take out of use things that are out of calibration or maintenance. Quite often that doesn't happen. There's confusion and we end up with issues through the process. Batch records can be quite complex, so we might also have extended time frames for pre-release review of the data itself, which again can be quite sort of overbearing. And that's without considering the complexities of the batch records themselves. So we'll take a peek at how we solve some of these issues. Now, we don't have time to go into the process of creating a batch record, but like the rest of MasterControl, it's designed with power but ease of use in mind. The system is no code, with much of it based around a drag and drop philosophy. So what does that look like in the production record itself, and how do we start solving some of those issues that I'd mentioned earlier? So I'm going to go straight into a batch record that we have up and running here. Now, I'm an operator, so I can come directly in and start completing the tasks that I need to do. Now, you're going to be creating units. So we can see on the left-hand side, we've got filling, packaging, and QC units. Within those, we're going to have distinct operations. So within our filling phase, we might be preparing, compounding, and then going through the filling process itself. And then within the preparation, we've obviously got the individual phases, the task groups that need to be completed. I can follow the blue ball. So again, it's straightforward for the user. It's going to guide me through almost kind of karaoke style through the various elements. And also we can set dependencies within here if we wanted to. So if I wanted to go straight to the filling stage and start that process, then I'm going to get a dependency warning that tells me that I've not completed previous steps. So I need to go ahead and complete those before I can actually undertake those actions. Again, you decide how this process looks like. You might want to do several steps in parallel. That's absolutely fine. But again, we want to make sure that the right processes are completed at the right point in time. So if we come into the preparation and equipment phase that we're needing to work to, I, as an operator, am going to be just following my way through this particular batch record part of the process. And we want to start thinking about some of those connections that we spoke about earlier on in the session. Now, one very strong and very obvious connection is between the batch record and documents and training. So against my instructions that I can see and work to here that I've created in this batch record, I might have links to other documents and content that are kept in a revision controlled way within the system. So I've got an SOP here, and I can not only call out that there's an SOP that needs to be worked to, but I can bounce directly into that document and content within the system if necessary. So I'm working on a laptop today, but if you're using tablets in clean rooms and other areas where you can't have paper, again, it's very simple and straightforward to get into the content that you need to related to the batch records. I can then read through the document and content as necessary, and that can help me in this particular instance if I need to. As I said, we can also do training checks. So it might be that I have to be deemed competent to do particular activities against this particular part of the batch record. So we can always ensure that people are able to do what they need to do. Again, it reduces the chance of issues and competency audit findings happening later on. We do have the ability as well to digitize logbooks within MasterControl. Now, I'm not going to be able to go into that in any real detail today. Obviously, reach out to us if you're interested further about that. but it might be that I, in this case, just need to confirm that I've completed and checked the logbook in this particular instance. So I can just confirm, and rather than having to write dates, times, and information on pieces of paper, I can just go through the system and confirm, and it automatically logs when that process has happened. We can do a lot more besides that, of course, and I'll show you a couple of examples in just a second. So the next thing I need to do is to start the confirmation phase, so I can read through the instructions. Again, there may be other documents that relate to this that I need to look at. I can confirm that that particular process has been completed, and I might need to check a few valves as part of this process as well. So I can confirm that those have been done, and again, it logs the person and when it was actually undertaken. One of the other things in terms of connectivity that we can think about is to equipment calibration and processes. So I've got the ability here to select from some equipment that I might need to use in this particular process. And we can see that we've got various pH meters that I can go and select from, but 2 of the 5 that I've got are actually out of use. They've reached the calibration, they're out of service. For whatever reason, so I can't select those. I can only select what is current and what is usable. So again, it stops inappropriate things being selected and issues coming up. So I can select equipment 5. We can also surface information around that calibration if we want to. So I might want to say, when is the next calibration due? Again, we're just looking at some of the options and the art of the possible here. And the next task that I need to do here is around preheating, and I've got 2 specific units that I need to heat up to particular temperatures. So I can just record the time that I started to do that process. And then we start thinking about some of the other data that we might want to capture. So I need to get these 2 units up to a particular temperature point. Now, you can, of course, link to other systems and pieces of hardware if you want to. So I might want to pull in this information into the batch record via an API. That's very usual and common. In this particular case, though, I'm just going to be hand typing the temperature that we encountered in this particular case. So we've got a physical limit here of 122. I might say that it's 120. So we're saying that it's actually outside of the physical limit. So I can notify, either the operator or maybe even send a notification and a flag to a supervisor or a manager, telling them that we've breached a particular limit here. And at this point, I might say, well, actually, this is the genuine value that we'd reached. I might want to launch a quality event process, a deviation or a non-conformance directly from within this batch record. Again, that's an example of the connectivity to quality and the QMS side of MasterControl that we've got. In this case, though, I might have just fat fingered it. So I want to correct the entry. So it was actually 122. So I can say what the correct value is. I can enter why the correction was needed. Again, you can decide what these correction reasons look like, and I can apply the correction. So we've made that change there, and I can see the corrections, the audit trail, directly within the batch record if I need to as well. We'll also take a look at how we can group these together and surface them in what we call group by exception a little bit later on. So the second temperature may be 310. Again, that might be a genuine sort of temperature that we're logging there. And as we've said, we might want to launch out a quality event process, a deviation or a non-conformance to document, to contain, and to maybe escalate that problem further on down the line. And we'll take a little look at how that works in the QMS side of MasterControl in a couple of moments' time. So once I've finished my process, I can record the date and time that both of those units had reached temperature. And as I mentioned earlier, we also ideally want to be automating things like calculations within the system as well. Now, these that you see here are just really straightforward calculations around a couple of different timings, but we can do quite complex calculations within MasterControl if we need to. We can even project information from previous phases in the batch record into subsequent calculations. So there is a lot that we can do from that point of view as well. So we've had a little look at how we can fill in the batch record. Once I've completed it, I can just confirm that these elements have been undertaken. And as you can see here on the left-hand side, we've got a little green tick against our preparation. So we've actually completed that. We can then go on to the compounding stage. That dependency warning has now been removed from that accordingly. So we'd spoken about how complex batch records can be, and keeping track on any exceptions can be quite a laborious process. But because we've digitized the data, we can surface the relevant information in one place, and we call that review by exception. Now, I can show any supporting evidence or attachment, so I can see at a glance for this particular batch record at any step. It doesn't need to be necessarily at the end of the process. What we've actually corrected, any attachments. So if we put in any supporting evidence, what does that look like? Again, you can take photos from tablets and upload those into the batch record if you need to. Any quality processes, so things like deviations and things like that. And any limits that might have been exceeded. So I can see that from a top level perspective if I want to, but I can also dig into the detail if necessary. So what steps did we correct? What were the audit trails around that particular correction, around the temperature that we made a couple of moments ago? So we've had a little look at the batch record side of MasterControl and how that operates. We'll now start digging into some of those connections that we talked about around the QMS portion of MasterControl. And MasterControl gives you the ability to create and manage any quality event or any form indeed within the system. And if you want pre-designed forms that track to best practices for things like non-conformances, CAPAs, etc., then you're in luck, as MasterControl provides those processes directly out of the box. But we also realize that all organizations differ, and so will your processes and the data that needs collecting. So you can change the forms that we provide as standard, or you can build them from scratch in a powerful no-code way. Again, everything is designed around ease of use, but giving you the ability to standardize, but also giving you flexibility around that as well. Now, we're not going to be able to go into the detail of how you can design these forms. That's for another session, but let's think about the key concepts of the benefits around what we might want to see in a quality management system. So when we encounter issues in organizations, we might want to document those issues through forms. We've seen an example in the batch record that we've just been in. We might want to contain those problems. So we might want to do particular activities for other members to complete and then track those through to completion. MasterControl is a task-based system. But then we need to decide what needs to happen to this particular issue right now. So MasterControl has various tools to help tracking, trending, and flagging of systemic issues that you might encounter. Our out-of-the-box quality event forms also use a risk-based escalation process to determine what needs to happen to this particular event subsequently. So we've raised the deviation from the batch, and as part of the deviation form, and we'll look at an example of this in the system in just a second, we might have determined that it's the first time we've seen the problem when we actually go into the investigation. It's minor in terms of impact. So that puts us in the acceptable category of risk in this particular case. So as we said, we still need to put that deviation through its workflow process. There are going to be tasks and activities that we need to complete, but then we can close that event out. There's nothing more that we need to do from that perspective. We completed the actions, we've tracked them through and ticked them off. But we're now seeing more deviations happen on a regular basis in the same kind of flavor. So now they're happening on a continual basis. They're still minor, of course, in terms of impact, but that puts us in a very different category of risk within the process. So from the deviation form, and we'll see an example, as I said, in a moment, we can actually launch downstream processes. So there may be a CAPA that you need to start from the deviation. That might take us into the root cause investigation, corrections and preventions. Again, you can use our out-of-the-box forms. You can also build your own CAPA forms, workflows and processes as well, if you need to. And usually within those corrective and preventative processes, there's going to be some kind of change control that's going to be involved. And MasterControl can manage change on any level. It might be very, very complex changes. Maybe you need to make a change to the manufacturing process. There need to be SMEs involved in it. You might need to do sort of, regulatory and validatory testing around sort of the new process that needs to be undertaken. Or it might be a really simple change that needs to be made. So maybe the reason that we've seen those deviations launched from the batch record is that a work instruction is confusing people. We might need to make the changes from that perspective. And that can then take us into the side of document control. Again, we'll look at this briefly in just a second, which can then automatically have an impact on training. Once I've made an update to that particular SOP or work instruction, If we want to, we can automatically launch the training task out to the relevant people that need to take it. So again, I'm not having to manage things manually. I'm not having to manage my spreadsheet. The system is shouldering the heavy lifting from that perspective. So let's take a quick look at how that works in practice. So we've launched out one of our quality event processes, as we'd seen a couple of moments ago. So we're just going to take a little look at an example of what this looks like within the system. So we've got a deviation process that we've actually progressed through the workflow. So I want to be able to show you some of the information that we can potentially capture through the process if we need to. So when I come into the form, this is what I'm needing to complete here. So we're at our investigation and discrepancy step. Now on the right-hand side, I can see where the form has been against the workflow process that we've designed and we're using. So we've initiated the form. I've completed varying pieces of information within there. I can look at all of that. I can open this up and check it out if I need to. And as a user, I'm going to be obviously guided through the process. So I need to answer some questions and fill in the form as you might need to. So I've already completed part of it. So I just need to sort of finish that off. One of the things that we spoke about was that within these processes, we also want the idea of breadcrumb trails or connectivity between the forms themselves. So as we spoke about earlier, the out-of-the-box forms contain a risk assessment and escalation step. So we can decide what is the frequency and impact in this particular case, what is the risk score, and because we're at a high level of risk in this particular instance, then I actually need to start a kappa process. And I can either do that directly from within the form, as we can see here, or if I've launched a kappa separately, and you can do that by all means, that's not a problem, I can simply search for that and I can link to it within the deviation. So we've got this breadcrumb trail that we've now started to define. We've launched a deviation from our batch record. We've done an investigation. It needs a kappa process. So we've now linked to it all within one connected platform. And I can bounce into that kappa record if I need to. So again, both from an operational perspective, and also when you're in an audit situation, it makes it very, very easy just to navigate those breadcrumbs to say, okay, well, we started off with a kappa. Why did we end up with this? Well, we had several deviations that resulted in it. Well, where are those? Okay, well, they're here on the right-hand side. We've linked them to the kappa process. So you can pull together any supporting information that's necessary. Some of those might be attachments, as we can see here on the right hand side, so things that sit outside of MasterControl but are still important to this particular corrective and preventative event. We can also link to things that sit within the MasterControl platform as well. So as we've said, deviations that resulted in this escalating into a kappa. And we might also want to link to things like documents. So again, I can search for those within the system. I can pull them into the kappa process. And in the same way as we saw that being able to be viewed within the batch record, we can also navigate and jump directly into those documents from the quality event processes as well themselves. So that takes us a little look at how we can manage quality events from the batch records. Again, we can take that connectivity further down the line if we need to from a document process. So our work instruction can be launched on a change process, a workflow where we can define the steps or roles that need to interact with it. So in the same way as you can build your batch records and the people that need to be involved in it, your quality event processes and the people or roles that need to be involved with it, you can do the same thing with your document workflows as well. We have a lot of sort of flexibility but power. And as we've seen through the session, MasterControl provides out-of-the-box best practices, but they're flexible to your business processes, so you can decide how you want it to look. And as we've said, ease of use from an end user perspective is important. So you can track and manage your document changes directly in Word through MasterControl. So it might be that I want to launch this out on a collaboration type task, pull people into that collaboration environment, make the changes to the documentation in their native file format. So I can just open it up in Word, make the changes. And then once I've tidied the documentation up, I've revised my SOP or work instruction, I can put it through whatever approval processes are required. Now, once we've done a final approval on that workflow process for that document change, a couple of things can happen. So we can re-release another revision of that document. So again, we don't delete anything from MasterControl. We put it through drafting, releasing, and then archiving. All of that is trackable and traceable again. So I might want to go into a particular document and see the history of it. How has it changed and why has it changed over a particular period of time? I might also want to automatically launch the training tasks out against that particular piece of content again. So again, there's connectivity between documents and training. I need to read and understand to go to the relevant people. As soon as I've approved that document, it can go out and be read and understood. And obviously, all of this is reportable from within MasterControl as well. So how does that look from an end user perspective? So once we've made those changes, again, how is an average user going to interact with the system on that basis? So we've come back as one of our operators, Jeff, who was in the batch record earlier on. And when he comes into MasterControl, he can see the various tasks and activities that he needs to complete here. So as he's a fairly basic user, most of them are going to be training tasks. We'll step into one of these in just a second. We also have the ability within the system to create and maintain explorers. So in the same way as you can jump to documentation and content within your batch record, I can also drill into the various SOPs and work instructions if I need to. So I might want to go into the operator documents, into my manufacturing procedures, and then open up the content and view that online in my browser in exactly the same way as I've just shown you. Now, we made a change to that SOP as a result of the issues that we saw within the batch record. And at the end of that document change, as we've said, we've launched out another training task to the relevant people. So Jeff will be notified via email that he needs to undertake the training, and he can step directly into that training activity from within his task list there. Now, as we've said at the beginning of the session, in terms of training tasks, it can be as straightforward as just to read and understand. That's super common. Most organizations tend to have that level of training. You might also have maybe an examination. We'll be looking at an example of that in just a second. They may also be competency-based trainings. So maybe it's not around a particular document that I need to sort of confirm that I've read and understood, but perhaps I need to demonstrate to Tom that I'm able to do a particular activity under his supervision, and he can verify and then sign me off that I'm then competent to do that. In any of those cases, users are going to be following the process flow that we can see, similar to the batch record kind of idea. It'll guide them through the lit elements, almost kind of karaoke style. And we always start with an introduction. We don't want people needing to ask within the business, well, what is this training? What do I need to do? So we can say to them, fairly straightforward, just read the attached documentation, take the examination, and then sign off the task in this particular case. Jeff will then be able to access the materials, and he can open up that calibration SOP, and again, exactly the same way as I've shown you previously, view it online in his browser. There may also be the need, perhaps, for additional supplementary training materials. Again, keep in mind we are file format neutral. You can place any type of material that you want within MasterControl. And that could be something from a PowerPoint presentation, as we see in this example, right the way through to maybe a video that Jeff has to watch and then answer questions on. So once we've read through the materials, we can then take the examination. And that's just going to tell Jeff what is the examination that he's taking. Is there a particular passing score against this that he needs to sort of hit? So we can place thresholds. If you don't get the right score, then you're going to fail it, and we can notify people and obviously report on all of that accordingly. How many goes is Jeff allowed? So we can set a number of tries before, again, his supervisor or manager is notified. So we've read through the materials. We can tax users to get an understanding that they actually know and understand it, if we don't just want them to confirm that it's read and understood. So I've just got a couple of questions here that give you a flavor of how these work. So I can read through the question. This particular one has also got some extra information in terms of a picture in it. And we can also tax users in a number of different ways. It's not just true, false, or multiple choice type questions. I might need to pull answers into a particular order, maybe put answers against a particular question. There are, I think, 5 different question types that we can create within the system. And I'm doing all of this within the MasterControl platform. I'm not using anything external to complete this. So once I've undertaken the exam, then MasterControl will automatically grade it for me. So it'll tell me how have I done. I've passed in this particular case. So all I need to do is to put in my Part 11 compliance signature, sign this off, and we'll see that task now disappear from Jeff's task list because he has completed it. Obviously, if that was related to the batch record, Jeff would then be free to go ahead and complete that particular phase within the record itself. And of course, as we've said, we don't have time to go into the reporting side of MasterControl, but there are a lot of out-of-the-box dashboards and reports, again, that you can lean into to understand what is or isn't happening within the business. We also give you the ability to create your own reports and dashboards as well. So it's a very powerful tool for understanding what's happening within the organization. So we've taken a look at some of the core connections within MasterControl, creating and executing a batch record along with the power of surfacing documents and the advantages that review by exception brings within the process. We've looked at how you can launch quality events from within the record if there is a need, and how we can take you through your business processes to decide if there is an escalation that's required. We've looked at how we can loop back to documents and training to ensure that the end user is always up to date with your key processes. So we've been through quite a lot there, Tom, but we've got, I think, a couple of minutes if there are any questions out there.
Awesome. Thank you, David. That's excellent. So yeah, do you want to stop sharing and I'll quickly put the presentation back up? Thank you very much. So yeah, we have had some questions come in, which is great. Thank you everyone for your participation. So let's just dive into the first one really, and is MasterControl compliant ISO 13485, EU MDR, EU GMP, and GDP? David, do you want to take that or?
Well, the short answer there is yes. Yes, we comply with those standards, no problem at all. If you want any further information as to how we do that, then yeah, feel free to reach out and we can sort of discuss or sort of show you how that works within the system.
Brilliant. Yeah, I was just going to say we do have a link online. I'm just opening up here, which gives you all of our quality and compliance information. So all the procedural documentation, compliance documentation, and company information. So we can share that with you as well later on. Second question, is it possible to document manufacturing steps who are performed in 4 eyes check? For example, operator 1 needs to perform and operator 2 needs to check. Again, the short answer here is yes, this can be done. We can add witnesses and verifiers to any phase within the builder. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, David.
No, I think that was very succinctly put, and absolutely, yeah, we can do that.
Awesome. Can videos be embedded as training material? So MasterControl QMS is pretty much file agnostic. So videos are able to be hosted and put into the system and used in whatever way you need from a training perspective as well. When having a linked QMS process for kappa and deviations to an SOP, will this also be cross-linked vice versa in the SOP dataset in the document management system?
I'm not sure I understand the question there, Tom.
So it's from Dominic Films. So a QMS process, so having a kappa and deviation linked to an SOP, will this be cross-linked vice versa in the SOP dataset in the document management system?
Yeah, so there are links that you can create both from the quality event into the document and vice versa as well. Brilliant.
Thank you. Alexandros, your question around the training module support integration with SCORM as standard. Yeah, as we said, file agnostic. So if you've got e-learning courses in SCORM format, then we absolutely do support that as well. Can this system incorporate stock control, i.e. starting material and consumables, as well as clinical end product? Maybe one for you, David, from that side of things.
So it's really around quality and manufacturing processes. I mean, from a batch record point of view, if you want to control stock from that end, then absolutely fine. It can actually determine that you've actually used particular pieces of stock within a production process. but it's really built around the manufacturing and the quality elements rather than actually managing stock directly within the system. But there are APIs that can achieve that if we need to to manage those processes.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. Can MasterControl connect or integrate with ERP LIMS equipment? Short answer, yes. So as the system, we have a number of APIs available that can be used in that way. But we also do have a team of developers, engineers in the background who create integrations from the ground up for those types of scenarios. So we regularly see our MES integrated with ERP and LIMS systems. So absolutely something we can support. And I guess one we haven't really covered in too much detail so far is the system validated? Yes, MasterControl is validated, but David, you were going to jump in then.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So absolutely, we validate for every release of MasterControl. We provide you with all of the documentation you can access. You can download that information. We also provide what we call a validation excellence tool. So this is a patented tool that allows you guys to understand for each module and function within the system, what's our level of validation around it? So how bad is your day if that particular element fails? How far have we mitigated that through the testing? Crucially, VXT also considers your intended use of MasterControl. Every organization uses it slightly differently, and you might have maybe differing levels of risk around certain elements, perhaps on how you're actually going to be working with that particular module. So we basically feed those two in together. It's a wizard-driven tool that guides you through the process, and it will determine, based on those elements, whether you actually need to do any additional testing or whether you can just lean on the validation documentation that we've provided in particular scenarios. It will also produce your own validation plan and reports. So obviously you have access to MasterControl's ones for our testing, but you need to create your own ones, of course, for your own sort of intended use. We also have what we call validation on demand. So this is something that's relatively new to MasterControl, but the platform is now adopting this. So at a push of a button, you can validate your batch record. You can put it through the validation process. It will create documents for you that tell you, what was tested and what the outcomes were in those situations. And the same for things like our quality event processes. So I've got a Kappa process. I can validate that workflow, again, with a push of a button and generate the validation report based on that. So those two together, validation on demand and the validation excellence tool, again, really give you quite a robust way of being able to determine, what validation is required and to make sure that you guys have the documentation that you need when you're in an audit situation. Sorry, I went a little bit off piece there, Tom, but hopefully that gave a relatively good answer.
Absolutely, yeah. Always good to know about the wider validation world. And then I think as we're coming up to kind of 10:45 here now, let's take one more, and we've got, how is the system licensed? So MasterControl is licensed on a named user basis, and it varies slightly between QX and MX, so our quality system and our manufacturing system. So let me just share something on the screen again for you. So we start with QX. We effectively have full named users and basic named users. So let's start with your basic named users. They are your read-only, can view documents, can take training, and can start quality events within the system. Anything else that's needed, such as performing configuration, creating new content, allocating training, approving documents, anything like that would need to be a full named user. So they're the two types. Within a full named user, you would also have your system administrators. So full named users can also have varying degrees of authority within the system and security settings within the system to create different types of full named users. So you'll have your system admins as well as managers there. From a manufacturing perspective, we have your operator license and your builder license. So operator license, as it says there, enables users to perform all the actions required for executing a production record. So issuing, witnessing, verifying, completing all those steps. typically these operators are on the shop floor, operations leads, or those stakeholders who need visibility into that production process. The builder license then is the next step up. So have all the same rights as operators. However, they're also responsible for creating, managing, and revising master templates that inform individual production records. So very similar setup to the full named user and basic named user of QX, just named slightly different and have slightly different rights there. So again, this document is something that is shareable. So if you do want some more information on that, do reach out and we will be sure to share that with you. So just having a quick look at the Q&A, that's everything that we've covered there. So with that in mind, we do have a QR code here for you. If you're wanting to learn a little bit more about MasterControl's connected platform, then please do scan that. Alternatively, reach out via email. I think based on your registration today, you'll be receiving some kind of communication from your local account executive anyway, to follow up and answer any questions that you may have. But apart from that, thank you very much for your time this morning. Hopefully you found it useful, informative, David, with an excellent demonstration there. And as I said, if you have any other questions, any information you'd like to get from us, please do reach out and we'll be more than happy to support you however we can.